Hello lovely people, welcome to this week's journal for all seasons. I'm going to do some more watercolour painting, but this time a little bit different. I've had in my head something that Mary Ellen over on the Red Parrot channel referred to a little while ago. If you don't know Mary Ellen, she does watercolour painting, journaling. She gets involved in all kinds of, mutual journaling thingy-bobs. She does something called Thrifty Canucks, which I believe is Canadians being thrifty. But I love watching her and listening to her. She's an absolute hoot. Anyway, she talked about watercolour and salt. So I've had that in my head to try for a long time, since I heard her mention it a few weeks ago, a few months, I can't even remember. But I didn't kind of know what and how. And then I've recently been thinking about the humble dandelion, because it's spring here in the Northern Hemisphere and the dandelions are coming into bloom. And I know they're very important for bees, bees that are on the wing early, because they're one of the few nectar-rich flowers that are around here at this time of year, and all that stuff. And also dandelion clocks, the seed heads, and blowing the seeds off to make a wish when you're a child, or to tell the time or whatever. So I thought, dandelion seeds floating on the wind sounds to me like salt in watercolour. So that's where my mind's gone, and I've got a lovely quote to share with you at the end. So because I want to do watercolour, I'm back to this same issue with my paper in my journal that I keep going on about. This page is just sketchbook paper, and it's quite flimsy sketchbook paper. That's not going to take watercolour. And I want to do wet in wet, which is when you wet the paper and then drop the paint into it and let it, bleed about and bloom and so on. And this is slightly sturdier sketchbook paper, but it's been coffee dyed, and I very much want the background to be whitish. So, and the third thing is I want to work landscape. So how can I make this work? This to me is part of self-care. There's metaphors to be found, I think, in making what you're given work for you. So number one is this spread is going to be working this way in my journal. So I'm going to have my picture here and my quote up there. So anybody looking through the journal will have to turn it. And I shall put the words this way, which will make it obvious, if it's not obvious from the painting, which way up it goes. Dottie, if you're watching, I know you hate sketchbooks turn portrait and landscape. It's a friend of mine that's got a bit of a thing about it, and she sometimes watches me. Anyway, apologies. But this paper, so I've got this is something else about self-care. I was bought a few bits and bobs a few Christmases ago. I say I was bought them, I chose them and put them, put a link to them, and they were bought for me by somebody who's no longer in my life. I won't say any more about that. But I've never used them because I didn't think I was good enough. This is Archer's watercolour paper. It's really expensive. It's really good quality watercolour paper, and I've had it for maybe, I think it's 3 or 4 years even, and I don't think I'm a good enough painter to use it. Well, I'm going to use it today. So that's number one. And beyond that, that's a big, it's not A3, it's a funny size, it's 10 inches by 14 inches. But just use any watercolour paper. I've got this. I'm not recommending that you rush out and buy that. Your eyes will water at the cost if you don't know. So anyway, I've torn a sheet down to sort of A4 letter size. And what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to work landscape on my piece of paper, because I need to tape it down to wet it. And then when I'm done, I'll stick it in my journal. But because this is such lovely paper, I don't want to stick that on there, because next week when I turn the page, I'm back to this sketchbook paper. I mean, it's sturdied up by the arches behind it. So what I thought I would do is I'll tear this or cut this down and just leave maybe an inch. I've got you quite low in, but I hope you understand what I mean. So I'm going to cut this down, leave maybe an inch left, and then glue my arches to it when I've done my painting. And then when I turn the page, that won't be there anymore. There'll just be a little hinge, and I can do maybe some more painting next week on the back of my lovely expensive paper. And then I'll write my quote up here, like I said. I don't know if I'll decorate this page or not. We'll see when we get there. So I don't need the journal for now. That also gives me the pleasure of painting on just a piece of paper and not in the journal. It's lovely to work in the journal for certain things, but for painting it's a little bit a pain. So I'm going to take this down. This does have two slightly different sides. This side is more textured and this side is less textured. I'm gathering that comes from the way it's made, you know, when it's pressed into the frames. I think you can work on both sides equally, so I think I'm going to go for the slightly more textured side up. And I'm going to tape it down, like I said, and if you're going to put loads of water on, you really need to do this, otherwise it all buckles. And I'm going to use masking tape, a slightly wider masking tape. You don't need to watch me do this. So I'm going to tape this down to my surface, and then I'm going to go and get myself some water and a nice big brush, and then I'll be back to share the painting, the first stage of the painting process with you. Okay, I've put you up a tiny weeny bit so you can see my paints. So I'm all taped down. You need, really, for putting water on, you need a great big watercolour brush. I believe they call it a mop brush. I don't have a great big watercolour brush, so I'm going to use this, which is the biggest one I've got, and it's synthetic, and see what happens. So I'm just going in clean water, so it doesn't hold the water the same as a proper watercolour brush does, you know, with natural bristles, but you work with what you got. So I'm going this way, see if that one's better. Got green in it, but that doesn't matter. No, it's not better. Let's go on with this one. If I really get into watercolour painting, then maybe I will need to invest in a couple more decent brushes, in the spirit of, even if you're not very good yet, using the best things you can afford, which for me won't be, you know, I'm not talking about professional quality, but just some kind of budget, bigger brushes. So I want to get it really wet. This, because it's good paper, will take it, and because it's taped down it can't go anywhere. I think that's just having a look from the side to make sure it's wet everywhere. So that's now all wet. I found my little spray of water and I've sprayed my watercolours, and now I'm going to go with, I want to sort of create a sky and a meadow, but very loosely, so basically blues and greens, and that's it. So I'm going to start high up with, let's go for this violet colour. And different colours bleed in differently, depending on how they're made, I believe. I'm no expert. I'm not going to clean my brush in between. I'm going to go for some cerulean blue and just let them blend together. A bit more of that. Let's go for some slightly darker blue, a bit more water. Let's go for the Talo blue, or Talo blue, or Phthalo blue, or whatever kind of blue. That's quite, oh, that's really blue. It will dry lighter, so I'm not going to be scared. I love watching it bloom. And now let's go in the greens. Let's start with the sap green, which is a favourite of mine. More water, lots of water. Let it blend. I don't really want it to look... I'm just creating a background really. That blends nicely with the other blue. And you can even just go with water if you want it more watery, but I do think I want it quite a lot of paint. Quite a lot of pigment, because like I said it will dry lighter. Let's mix in a bit of the Hooker's green, which is a more bottley green. More water, maybe over here, some of the dark cooker's green, that was a light. Now I'm going to go over again with more colour, so I'm going back to the lilac. Still haven't cleaned my brush, so just to strengthen it, not the lilac, the violet I mean, just to strengthen it up here and there, and some of the blue again, because you kind of need something for the salt to react with, I think. I did watch a couple of videos, full disclosure, never having done this before. Let's bring some of that blue down into there a bit. Maybe we'll have a bit of Viridian, Viridian. I love Viridian as well. Right, so now I need to sort of decide where I want my dandelions to be. So I could, maybe I'll just get a smaller brush, slightly smaller brush, and get some very dark green, so I might have to mix that. I might mix a bit of Payne's grey with some of my dark green and just mix it on the pan. Sorry if my head comes in the way. And then maybe say I'm going to have one there, maybe one there, and maybe one down here somewhere. And there'll probably be smaller ones in between, but those are my main ones, if you like. And now for the salt. Now I've got quite coarse rock salt, and I've got my grinder. I'm not sure which works best, so I'm going to do both, because these are really big chunks. I'm going to put some of them around like that. I have a feeling these chunks are too big and they're not going to do anything, but you never know. So I'm putting them round where the main dandelions are, but also a little bit elsewhere. And now I'm going to just try grinding some as well. Temptation is to go really mad. And now I'm going to leave that to dry naturally. So I'm going to take maybe a tiny bit more around there. I'm going to take Stella for a walk, and I'm going to put something over this, I don't know what, so Frederick can't walk on it. I'm asleep on my bed at the moment. He'll probably stay there, but you know, you don't know, do you? So I'll rig something up. You don't need to worry about that. That's for me to worry about. And I'll be back when that's completely dry. Now, the received wisdom is do not dry it with a hairdryer or anything. Let it dry naturally. So we have to exercise patience, don't we? Okay, that's dry. That took a heck of a long time. I had a walk. I met some neighbours. We all sat on the bench and had a chat for half an hour while the dogs ran around together. Stella and Fred are now having a wrestle. The fact that my tape is peeling up is because I did put a hairdryer on it after I said don't. I will try the hairdryer trick when I come to get the tape off. Yeah, it was still wet when I got home, so I got impatient. So what I need to do now is get the salt off, basically. It has done something. It's kind of pulled the paint, the pigment, into little areas. I could get the tape off and lift it up and scoop it off, but it's stuck down quite hard. I'll just pick at it with my nails. But I think I want to do more, you know, messy work on it, so I don't want to do that. So I'll just go ahead and get the salt off as best I can, and I'll be back when I've done that. Okay, that wasn't easy. What I would say is use the rock salt, don't grind it, because it was the little tiny bits that were really hard to get off. It was almost like sandpaper. Started to hurt my fingers, so I got this old toothbrush that was here in my pot at the side, and I used that, and I really had to scrub quite hard holding it like this. So I think you really do have to have watercolour paper. Any other paper it would really break down. And then when I had loose bits, I sort of felt with my finger to check that I got all the grains off. Then I use this big soft, this is a DIY brush, just to sweep it off. But look at the effect. I definitely want to play more with it. Look at the salt, it looks like sea glass. I don't know if I can find a use for that, we'll see. Yeah, I definitely want to play with it more, but I'll just use the big grains which come off easily. And I don't know if you can see, I'll get my hands out of the way and then I'll zoom in on this section of the video just to show you up close. I think this blooming is also due to the salt. I'm not entirely sure, it might just be the paint. But where the salt has been, it's kind of sucked the pigment towards it, particularly up here, and made these much darker areas. And here as well a bit. But you know, it's not bad for a first go. I quite like the overall effect of it, so let's say we're happy with it. Now I want to do some more wet work before I start going in and messing about with pens and pencils. So I think what I'm going to do is I've got some white watercolour in a tube. This is like a mega cheap sort of child's one. It says Master Art on it, but it really isn't, because it's easier to get lots of it. I could also use gesso or white acrylic paint. The trouble with acrylic paint is you can't then draw over it easily with, you know, pencil crowns and things. So I'm just going to get some of this out onto my plate. And I've got this brush. It's a really old proper bristle brush. It was probably a very good brush in its time. It's a Reeves 10, but it's really stiff and it's been mistreated. But it's really good for this kind of thing. So I'm going to get some of my white paint on there. Not very much, as if I was doing stippling, you know, when you stencil. We're back to stenciling again. I might just try it here on my scraps just to see how it's coming out. Yeah, and then round those dark bits where I decided my, and that's not enough paint now, decided my dandelions were going to go. Is it working? That's better. There we go. Now it's happening. Just to begin to give the effect of a dandelion head. Just needed to get a bit of paint well into the bristles. And I'm not entirely sure how big I want it to be. I mean, I'm going to do more to it than this, but this is just a start, I thought. I just can't really see if that's very round. Can you tell me? Is that very round? So I'm going to do the same to the other two, those darker areas that I made. Okay, so I've done my 3 areas. I've still got a little bit of paint left, so I'm just going to do some very light little dabs just to begin, because I might have some seeds floating on the breeze. So I'm just kind of suggesting where they might be. I think I quite like them all going that way, so I don't think I'm going to put any up here. Just to give a kind of sense of movement. Maybe baby. I'm just going to go and change my water. Hang on a sec, because I want to do some white splatters, so I don't want my water to be green. I've got my splatter guard and some clean water. Whoops, clang, sorry about the clang. I think I might just need a bit more white there. I could have used the white on my palette, it just would have required a bit more working at it, plus I've got this, so I thought I'd use it up. So I'm going to get my bigger, so lots of water, and just get the paint worked a bit, and I'm just going to splatter in the same area and hopefully not make it blob, not wet enough. A little bit around the flowers as well. There we go. I always say there we go and then I carry on. Stop. And stop. Right, let's get rid of that. I've got a splatter down there. If I minded, I could just get my bit of kitchen roll. These are my two bits I've been using. I did another painting the other day. That was the bit I was using before. See how fabulous that is now for collage. With a bit clean there. I'll just use that. So if you do mixed media, definitely save your bits of kitchen roll. There we go. So I'm just going to leave those little splatters to dry. That shouldn't take long. Oh, I know the other thing I was going to do wet. I think I'm going to do some gold. I don't know why, because everything has to have gold. So I'm going to use this same technique as I used with the white in the beginning. With the stipply, I think, rather than splattering. And I might just do, I've washed that so it hasn't got white on it anymore. I'll get a bit of water going on my little bit of gold. Get it all juicy. It's a bit too juicy now. Actually, don't do it on there, do it on the kitchen roll. Do it on the kitchen roll and then you can use it in collage, see, so you're not wasting the paint. That seems okay. I might just put a tiny bit, just kind of, I mean, I know dandelions don't have gold on them, but we're not going for realism here. Just like little, the sun's catching them and causing little gold highlights. We can get gold in anywhere if we want to. Just adds another thing, another layer, another element. There we go. And that was all I wanted to do. So I'm going to clean my gold brush on there. And now I am going to wait for that to dry, and then I'll be back with whatever it is I'm going to do next. So I've gone with the hairdryer around my tape, so that's dried the paint as well. And I was going to get it off and I thought, no, you like to see it, so I think it has bled under the edges a bit. But that doesn't really matter. And it's coming off pretty cleanly, I have to say. It's just, I didn't overlap it far enough. There. It's got down in between. I can just touch that up if I want to with a little bit of white something. Actually, this Arches watercolour paper is more cream than white. I also find pulling tape off, if you don't pull up, you know, do you see I'm not pulling up, I'm pulling away. I think on this paper it would be pretty good anyway. There, look, it's gone under there as well. I'm a messy pup. Lovely to see that clean edge, isn't it? Except for there where I've done that. Do you see how I'm kind of keeping it flat to itself? I just think it comes off cleaner that way. There we go. So apart from I have to sort out the whoopsies, that's looking okay so far. I can now hold it up and you can see what the salt's done. Here, I think this is salt. I'm not entirely sure, I'll have to do more work. I think these are salt, more, you know, experiments I mean. I'm not sure if this is the salt doing this. If you know, if you're a watercolour expert and you've done salt, I'm not sure. I think this might have happened anyway without the salt. I'm not 100% sure. But so now I need to make them look like actual dandelions and not just fluffy blobs. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is give them a stem. So I've got my dark brown Stabilo Aqua colour, which is just a pencil crayon. It's a watercolour one, but I'm not going to watercolour it. And I think I'm just going to do a sort of suggestion of stems. So to do stems you need to kind of make sure they're coming somewhere from the middle of the flower, even if you're being loose. So imagine the middle of the flower's here. I might want this one to kind of come down like this, I think. I learnt this from Michelle at the Creative Co. It's kind of obvious, but you might not think of it. So I'm just suggesting where that stem might be, just with a single line to start with. And then this one maybe will come more this way. So I'm not starting in the middle, but I'm kind of ghosting where the stem will come, if that makes sense. And then this one maybe somewhere down here. So start in the middle, but don't put your pencil down until you're outside the flower. I'm just going to thicken them up now. I think I don't want to really sort of draw them as such as suggest them, so I'm going to do more rough lines like that. And I might now, with my black micron pen, it's a fine one, 0.3mm, just do some very sketchy lines. Just to define them a little bit, but not very much. I don't know, I just felt like doing it. And I think if you feel like doing something, maybe you should just do it. It's working instinctively. It's only a page from a journal, like I keep saying, it's not a masterpiece, it's not going on the wall. I'm just expressing dandelions. And the advantage of getting it untaped, apart from seeing the glory of the clean edges, apart from those bits, is that you can turn it when you're working. Sorry if my head comes in. There we go. So already that makes them look more like dandelions, but I need to do more still. So I've got my Posca pen and my gel pen. This is a jelly roll. I've also got I just found this recently. I must have bought it or had it bought for me. I usually use this Uniball. I'm just going to have a little play and see if I see a difference. That's quite fine, the Uniball. I have a feeling this is a bit thicker. Yes, that's quite a much thicker line, so I think I'll stick with the fine one. I want to draw some little dandelion seed heads. You know, and they've got a stalk, haven't they? They're like a little umbrella, only the things go up rather than curving down. So I'm just going to just do a stick with some tufts coming off the top. Like that. And I'm going to try and do them every which way, and I'm doing quite gentle strokes, I'm not drawing, just kind of making gestural indications of dandelion seeds. It's like doing seed stitch when you're stitching, it's quite hard to be random and get them going all different ways. I don't know if you can see them, but I certainly can. They're quite subtle, but I think that's what I want. Another thing is, if you're drawing something like a stem or something that's tapering, draw it in the direction towards the fine point, if that makes sense, so that you can flick at the end. And so when I draw the little tufts, I'm not drawing in towards the stem, because then they'd be wider at the ends, and they're not, they're wider at the base. So I'm doing a flicky motion so that the end tapers away nearly to nothing. That one went a bit wrong, but anyway, I hope that makes sense. And I think, apart from sorting this out, I'm happy with that. I don't think I want to do anything else to it. This feels like a bit of an open space, so although I'm going to put my quote on my other page, I might do some words here, because it just feels like it needs something here. So maybe I'll go away and think of some words and stamp them on a bit of paper and stick them on, and sort out these if I can. Okay, I wet with some clean water where I'd got paint on the edge, and then with a clean napkin, what do you call that, kitchen roll, I dabbed off what I could, and now I've just gone over it with some thick white off my watercolour palette. because it's Chinese white, so it's a little bit creamy white. You can still see it. I'm going to let it dry and maybe just put another little coat. But while I was waiting for that to happen, I started fiddling about more. Of course I did, with my dandelions. So all I've done is I've gone round doing the seedy shapes that I did here, coming off the centre of them, because, you know, there's some still on there, obviously. So just the same movement, you know, a stem and some. I'm trying to get them at different lengths, because they'll all be, you know, they'll be, what you call it, not a spiral, but are they concentric? I don't know. I must go and look more closely at one. I mean, this is little things that you hardly see, but you know they're there and it's fun to do them. And then with the brown pencil that I used for the stalks, I've just gone in the middle and just done some little squiggly movements, just to define the middle a little bit more. So I'm just literally doing teeny tiny scribbles. And then with my micron pen again, I'll also do some little marks in the middle. Just tiny, teeny tiny. It's these little bits and bobs that I love doing at the end of a piece. And then you have to know when to stop, of course, but just to give a tiny bit of form to the centres so they look slightly less blobby. And there's just something about colouring or drawing over watercolour when it's dry. I don't know what it is, I just like it. There we go, stop, Catherine. Maybe just a little bit more line there. See, I say stop, but I don't listen to myself. And if you want to get, you know, more realistic and do leaves or dandelions that are still in flower, you know, whatever, you go for it. But I'm just quite happy with that, I think. Okay, I'm done with the main piece. I just went with Make a Wish, short and to the point, and I printed it with my little stamp set, inked the edges, and I just went round just off the edge with gold, and then I started writing. You can still see my blubby marks, but anyway, then I wrote Make a Wish all the way around the edge, Make a Wish, Make a Wish, Make a Wish, all the way around. And as I came back round to the beginning, I just kind of eyeballed to make sure I could fit in, you know. So I'm quite happy with that. That's a nice simple little piece. But before I stick it in here, I haven't torn the page yet or anything, I'm thinking I'm going to write my quote up here, but I'm thinking I want to put something around this edge first as well. And I might draw some little dandelion type flowers just to edge the page, not all the way around, just on these three sides. So I thought it might be quite nice to just put some very thin gesso in behind where I'm going to do that. So I'll do that first. I'll put that to one side. So I've got my gesso in my jar. This is just white gesso. I don't think I need to colour it because the colour of the paper will show through a bit. So I'm just going to get a brush and pick a brush, not one of my good ones. It's the other thing with watercolour brushes, you're supposed to keep them only for watercolour. Let's use this one. This I use for all kinds of stuff. This is actually a decorating brush. Use it for gluing as well. So I'm just going to carefully, because I haven't put anything in to protect it, I might just cover that green that seeped through from last week. Just, you know, not straight lines or anything, just a little bit of a kind of highlighty type thing, if you like. So just like this, just roughly, maybe an inch wide. Fred hair. So I'll just do that on the three sides. You don't need to watch me do that. And let it dry, and then I'll come back and draw and maybe paint some dandelions, I'm not sure. We'll see. I've done that. While I wait for that to dry, I thought I'd stick my painting in. So I've just put my ruler up against the spine, and I'm just going to tear this. Only one page, isn't it? Yeah, and hope for the best. It's pretty flimsy, so save that. And I've got this little spine to stick my painting to. I'm going to make a little mark on the back. I don't want to stick it right into the spine because it might interfere with it opening and closing. I'm going to come out maybe 1/8 of an inch. And then get a pencil and just make a little mark. I think it'd be easier to put the glue on here than mess about trying to get glue on that. I don't know whether to use my Mod Podge or... I tend to trust my heavy gel medium more. I'm sure Mod Podge is perfectly up to the job. So I'm just going to draw myself a little line, excuse my head, just so I can see where to glue. So I don't think you need to watch me do that. So I'm going to put some, I think I'm going to use my heavy gel medium just because it's kind of structural, along there and glue it onto there. Wait for that to dry and then I'll be back to draw dandelions with you and write my quote. Yes. Okay, that's all stuck in and the glue's dry and it's sticking up a bit, but it'll squash down when I close the book. So I've got the other side of my arches, like I said earlier, to work on next time. Don't know what I'm going to do on this book page. Very flimsy old book page. We'll see. Can always do this again. Replace the page. So the gesso's dry. It will be easier if I turn it this way. Oh, I've just realised that I have done it the opposite way to how I meant to do it. I meant to stick it in that way. Oh, never mind. So, dandelions. These are going to be super loose. Just suggestions of dandelions. Full disclaimer. I think basically I'm just going to use yellow paint and maybe go in for some detail with a watercolour pencil or a colouring pencil at the end. So I've got my palette. I've been playing about with some yellow, and what I'm going for really is cadmium yellow, pretty much, with a tiny bit of lemon yellow, just to yellow it up a bit. But you know, it's probably not enough to get all the way around, so that might change colour, but that doesn't matter. So basically, get a yellow. And I'm just going to, just move that. I'm just going to, ink all over my hands as usual, do some sort of petally shapes. Perhaps I'll do one here where you can see, just to get the idea, and then I'll go and do the rest off camera because my head will come in. And then I can sort of visualise there's the centre. And dandelion flowers, dandelion actually comes from the French dandelion, which means lion's tooth. And it refers to the shape of their petals. They're kind of square shaped like that and then a bit raggedy at the ends. So I'm using this cat's tongue brush, quite appropriate for a lion's tooth. But, you know, I'm not going for botanical accuracy here. It's just a suggestion. I'm just going to do this and get my hand in the way so you can't see. And then make similar movements coming into details in afterwards with the pencil crayon. Spit it out, Catherine. The pencil crayon. So do you see I've just made basically a blobby shape with these squarish sort of petally things going on at the edge. So I'll go and do that on my 3 sides and I'll be back when I've done all that and they're dry. Okay, I have gone on and started doing some detail. I was going to turn the camera on, but my neighbour decided to trim his front garden, and one of the disadvantages of being in a park home is the walls are not very thick, even though it's double glazed, and it was really loud in here. Anyway, we've only got a small garden, so it didn't take him very long. So I've got my yellow blobs, and here I've done some detail with coloured pencils. Still don't really think they look like dandelions, but I don't care, they're yellow flowers. So all I've done is I've got a reddish brown, a very dark green and a very dark brown, and I'm going around the centre with a sort of reddish brown ring. I mean, you maybe come up with a better way of drawing a dandelion. They haven't really got green centres, they have got this sort of orangey red colour if you look really deep in. but there will be shadow, so that's really why I'm doing that. A bit of dark green. And then with the dark brown, try and keep my hand away, I'm going around the edge and I'm doing, they've got multiple rings of petals. They're from the family Compositae, used to be Asteraceae, and then they changed it, which means made up of, composed of many petals, basically. So, but I'm just going to do a couple because otherwise I'll be here, forever. Bearing in mind that the petals are not petal shaped, they're square at the ends and a bit raggedy. So you kind of aiming for elongated rectangles, and I've been doing that but loosely, so wiggling a bit as I go. And I've been doing one round, one circuit, not trying to get them all the same size, in fact the opposite, and then going back round in between and coming out and not even outlining the paint. Some of the paint falls outside the lines that I'm drawing. I'm just doing a suggestion of a dandelion, basically. Put another one in there. This one in the corner ended up way bigger than the others. I might actually go around 3 times, depending on how big your flowers are. And then once I'd gone round, trying to get that distinctive sort of squared off end to the petal, I went back to the centre and just did some very rough sort of sketchy lines in a circular motion, or semicircular motion, just to give a bit of shadow to it. And I think actually that one, I don't know if it's because it's a bit bigger or because of the shape or the form or because it's got the extra row of petals, I think it's better than the others. So I'll go ahead and do that with all of those. Okay, I finished my dandelions. I wanted to do little leaves in between, but I didn't plan ahead and there wasn't enough room, so I just did these little symbols instead. And I have written my quote on. I wrote it on in pencil and then I've rubbed it out so I can still just see it, because I want to go over it, I think, in a white pen to kind of pick up the dandelion seeds. But I'm going to go with my gold pen first and just do something. Just feel like doing something. Don't know what, maybe little circles around there, just doodling basically, just having fun. The strimming stopped because I just wanted to talk a little bit about dandelions, because they are, I don't know in other countries, certainly in Europe and certainly here in the UK, they are a somewhat ubiquitous weed. But that doesn't mean they're not precious. Like I said earlier, I think, because that was not very long ago for you, but these videos take me the best part of a day, if not a couple of days, because of having to stop and start and, the drying time and all that. Yeah, what was I saying? And it's quite late in the day now and I'm a bit tired. Yeah, just because things are ubiquitous and therefore a weed. And who says what's a weed? A weed is just a plant in the wrong place in my book. And actually I lived in France up until last year, as many of you know, and there in the local cooperative, or the garden centre, the place where you buy your seeds, can't see where I'm up to now, they sell seeds of dandelions. And people grow them in their potager, in their vegetable garden, to eat the leaves in the spring, because they're a very good source of, I think, vitamin C, plus loads of other things. I have tried them. I find them quite bitter. They put the very young leaves raw in a salad. And funnily enough, the French for dandelion, even though the English word dandelion, like I said, comes from dandelion, lion's tooth, the French word for dandelion is pissenlit, which means to pee in the bed. And in growing up as a child in Britain, I certainly know as when I was little, that people said, oh, if you pick a dandelion, you'll wet the bed. And if you've ever picked a dandelion, you'll have seen that the stem exudes this sort of milky sap. And in fact, dandelions are known in herbal medicine as a diuretic, as something that makes you pee if you need help. I don't, but you know, some people do. Sorry. So there's always a reason, or there's often reasoning behind this, you know, these things that they say, isn't there? So I've done my little bits of gold, that made me happy. I'm going to go with my jelly roll, I think, because that's slightly thicker. There's no point in me doing that with you watching, because all you see is my head. So I'm going to go and do my writing, and when I've done my writing I'll come back and read it to you. So it won't be long. Okay, I'm done. So here's my quote. Try and hold it so you can see. It's attributed to someone called B. Atkinson. I couldn't find out if that was a man or a woman, or when they were from, or where they were from, or anything. But anyway, this is the quote. "And the dandelion does not stop growing because it is told it is a weed. The dandelion does not care what others see. It says, one day they'll be making wishes upon me." And I just love that. And so here's my, I'll do a little handheld. I've done that the last few times of the spread so you can see it in close up. Here's my upside down spread, because my book goes that way. I suppose it's sideways, so there is no right way up. So anyway, I hope you will have fun with that if you have a go at the watercolour and the salt thing. Yeah, do let me know if you've got more experience than I have and you've got any tips, because I'm not sure I did it completely right. But anyway, I've had great fun and I'm very pleased with how it turned out. So thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to you joining me next time for more journaling. Bye bye.